That's all part of this desperation to shut the lid down on the truth vibrations effect of bringing suppressed information to the surface. But they won't stop it. They can run around all they like. They ain't going to stop it.
It's hopeful. Good morning, David.
Morning.
It's nice to speak to you.
Yeah, you
and
too.
It's nice to have you here in Holland. We have a few questions for you. I think the first one is, so we try to make independent media here in Holland for
That's
4
all good.
years already.
Yeah.
And we've covered subjects like political scandals, financial world, banking, chemtrails. There's also a case of alleged pedophilia in the top of the Justice Department
I've come across that.
here in Holland. But we also covered the Bilderberg, and we made a recent documentary on 15 years after 9/11.
Okay.
After studying your work, so you could say these are all solitary events, but basically what you're saying is that there's a system behind all of these aspects. How can we communicate this to people?
Well, first of all, we get informed, and then we find a simple way of doing it. And it can be done simply. I mean, see, people think that you can't have a conspiracy by a few to control the many, because people would know. But not the way it works, you wouldn't. Not least in the way, as I go into in the books and in the talking events, how people go through a lifetime of perception programming for a start, literally from cradle to grave, which gives them a very narrow band of life, the world, possibility, everything. I call it the postage stamp consensus. And this is the basis on which science works, quantum physics apart to an extent, on which medicine works, politics works, media works. They're all on this postage stamp consensus of this is how the world is, this is what's possible, this is what's not possible. And if you start from the premise, which all those things do, not least the media, that a conspiracy, not just a major global conspiracy like I'm talking about, but conspiracies just in general don't happen. They're all theories. And then when you say to them, you know, you talk about conspiracy theory and conspiracy theorists, do you know where that came from? Well, no, it came from the CIA. Its widespread use of those terms, conspiracy theorist and conspiracy theory, came from the CIA in the 1960s. The documents are there to show it. They encouraged major media organizations in America to use those terms to discredit those people who had half a brain cell on active duty and could see that the official story of the Kennedy assassination in '63 and those that followed, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, clearly were in some way connected, and clearly the official story of Kennedy is a joke, the magic bullet and all that stuff, which goes round corners. And so, you know, someone can be shot in the front of the head by someone with a gun, you know, way behind him. Yeah, you know, U-turn bullets. I mean, it's just madness. So they had to try to discredit it. So what the questioning, so they came up with this thing about conspiracy theory, conspiracy theorists. So to explain how it's done in a simple way, or how it can be done, is to break through those barriers of it's impossible, it can't be done. And it's a real simple structure. It has to be simple or it wouldn't work. You've got what I call the spider in the center of the web, the global web. That is absolutely in the hidden. No one ever sees that. And then if you use the analogy of the spider's web, the strands immediately around the spider in the center, they're the most exclusive secret societies. They are the real people deep in the shadows who know the big picture. Then you keep coming out, and you then hit the secret societies we do know, we've heard of. We don't know about them that much, but we know of them. Things like the Freemasons, the Opus Dei, the inner sanctum of the Jesuit order, the Knights Templar, the Knights of Malta, etc. And then you keep coming out, and eventually you meet what I call the cusp organizations. They're at that point in the web where the hidden meets the seen. And these are your Bilderberg groups, Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, Club of Rome. They're, of course, to manipulate environment to justify transformation of society. And those cusp groups, and there are others, but they're the best known, they take this agenda dictated from the hidden and they play it out into the seen. And by the seen, I mean governments, government departments, the banking system, corporations, the global media, etc. And all these organizations, to answer the immediate question, well, someone would spill the beans. Well, actually, one or two people do, but not that many, for reasons I'm going to explain. All these organizations I'm talking about, in the hidden and in the seen, are fiercely compartmentalized. I mean, you look at a secret society like the Freemasons. Most Freemasons in the world are on the bottom 3 levels of degree. There's 33 in the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. And the 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite isn't really the top, it's only the official top. They go up into other pyramids above that. And each level of degree only gets to know what knowledge is available at that level, and you only get to the next level when that level invites you to join, and so on. And even as you go up the pyramid of the 33 degrees, the knowledge keeps changing. You know, oh yeah, well we told you that in that level because we've got to hide the real stuff. This is the real stuff now. Oh no, we actually wasn't quite right. We told you this is the real stuff, and so it goes on. So it's basically the mushroom effect of keep them in the dark and feed them bullshit. Compartmentalization. So the vast majority of people, even in a secret society, do not know what that secret society is really about. They only know their bit. In a town where I live, on the Isle of Wight in England, a few years ago, the local Freemasons everywhere on the Isle of Wight, it's ridiculous, they run the place. But they had an open day, show open they are, and I went along. A public open day, and I talked to some of these people. One of them had been a Freemason for over 30 years, hadn't got a clue what Freemasonry was about. I was asking him what the symbols meant on the windows and the walls, just to see what he'd say. He said, "Oh, I've no idea." He said, "It's all lost in antiquity." It's not, but it's just lost to you because they don't tell you what it really means. And so all these organizations are like that. You come into the realm of the seen, you go into a government agency. It's compartmentalized. The vast majority of people in the CIA and the FBI don't know what that organization is really used for, and what it's really a vehicle for. So this is how it works. And when you put that together with this program perception of everything that people go through the education system and life and media, etc. What's actually going on in the world and how everything is connected is understandably missed by most people, vast majority of people, and those who are told about it, most of them go, not possible. It is, through this web where the direction of society is coming out from the hidden. By the time it hits the scene, no one knows where it's come from. What do people say when they're told, we're going to do this now? They say, it's come from on high, I suppose we better do it. Well, what I started asking is, what is this on high? And what's the on high for the on high for the on high? Where's it lead? And this is how it comes about. But the idea is that you only see the strands, you don't see the web. Seeing the web is key to everything, because once you see the web, everything falls into place.
Yeah, and that's what largely your work has been focusing on, showing the web and showing how it's done.
Yeah.
So basically, what you're saying is the Bilderberg is an example of where the web goes from the unseen to the seen.
Yeah.
So basically, what you're saying is that most people who attend Bilderberg, their perceptions are also.
Oh yeah.
In more or less extent manipulated to.
I mean, if you look at the history, the Bilderberg group was much deeper in the web before. The alternative media has actually pulled it out. I mean, when I again, the synchronicity of my life has been extraordinary, really. I went on holiday to some friends in Switzerland back in the 90s, well back in the 1990s. And it was near the Italian border. And I then got this email from, you'll have heard of him, anyone in the alternative media will have heard of him. He's not with us now, unfortunately, Jim Tucker. Jim Tucker, of course, was the man who really almost single-handedly highlighted the existence of the Bilderberg Group. And this email, round robin to people who were connected to him in any way, said this year's Bilderberg group meeting is at Bergenstock, which was about a 2-hour drive from where I was staying. And I remember, driving there and going up a couple of days before, and all the suits were there, putting up the fences and all the Mercedes, big flash hotels, top of this mountain. And then I remember going back on the last day of the actual event, and you couldn't even get on the mountain. Swiss police, you were getting nowhere near the mountain, let alone the top of the mountain where the hotels were. So that was all going on then, but virtually nobody knew about it. So it was operating in secret. Not only were its meetings secret, to most people, the overwhelming vast majority, even its existence was secret. But what the alternative media has done is pulled it out of the shadows. But still, there are things that go on there that we don't fully know about. These organizations, these CUSP organizations, they invite people in, and they have people on their membership list, like the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations. The Bilderberg Group invites people in. Now there's a steering committee. They'll bloody know much of what's going on. I noticed Donald Trump's just appointed to his transitional committee someone called Peter Thiel, who's on the steering committee of the Bilderberg Group. I thought that's very anti-establishment, Donald. Good start there. Anyway, and then you have people who are the regulars, the Kissingers, the Dutch royal family are nearly always there, if not always there. You have these people, they will absolutely know. But then you have the people that come and go, whose perceptions need to be molded to suit something that's happening now. So they'll come in, and then when their usefulness is gone, they'll stop being invited, and so on and so forth. But so this is how it works, and it's compartmentalization. So what you've got, you see, because of this, you've got this defense mechanism where Freemasons say, I don't know anything about this, and I'm a Freemason. Okay, well, I can understand why. And people say, no, Bilderberg, it's just people talking and discussing in private. No, well, actually, that's your experience, but that's not what it's about. It's about molding the consensus so that there is a consensus of where you take the world forward, and that consensus is molded around what this hidden hand wants to happen, So it's not, people think it's kind of just either it can't be possible, and some think everyone's in on the no. It's not. It's much more subtle than that. But in the end, the people at the center are driving it, and loads of people that make a contribution to it doesn't even know that center exists, let alone what they're making a contribution to.
Yeah. So basically what it boils down to is a perception deception, one of the titles of your books. And how can we break this deception? Because from research we know that people rarely base their behavior on facts or...
Well, I'm a great believer in not looking for solutions, but looking for the way we remove the cause of the problem, which I think is always the most efficient way. We're drowning in solutions that take us into more problems. You've just said it. And I was listening to an interview 2 nights ago with a friend of mine called Kathy O'Brien, who's a lady in America who went through extraordinary levels, horrific levels of mind control and abuse in the infamous MK Ultra. and one of its elite offshoots called the Monarch Program. She interacted with in a mind-controlled environment, in an abusive environment with Father George Bush, with Hillary Clinton, with Bill Clinton and all these people. And so, as she was saying last night, you know, Clinton has been in the frame to run for president since way back. So these people don't come to the fore for no reason, by accident. But why I talk about Kathy is that she's got a book out which is about how people, basically under mind control, deprogram themselves. And as I just read the book actually, and as she was talking about how people do that, I'm thinking that is precisely what the population as a whole need to do, because mind control is relative, but it's still mind control. You can have someone taken into one of these horrific government military mind control projects and turned into an extreme version of what's become known as a Manchurian candidate, where someone plays out a program, might be an assassination program, it could be a terrorist attack program. We need to take that into account when we see terrorist attacks as well. And they follow their programmed perceptions and play it out. But when you look at the general population, most of the human population is mind controlled on that basis. It's not as a result of being taken away to a mind control center in some underground base and taken through a personal abusive mind control program year after year after year. But what is mind control? It's some external force or source of information or source of instruction dictating your perceptions and behavior. That's all it is. In the government mind control programs like Kathy O'Brien went through, of course it's very, very extreme. And it can get people to do things in fine detail according to the program. But what is the mainstream media? What is the education system, if not a mind control program? I mean, you know, look at it. In fact, life itself in this reality of madness is a mind control program. And what is a mind control program? It's a perception control program. So when you look at it, life itself is basically a mind control program in the way it's played out in this madhouse. You come into the world, blinking into the world, and immediately your parents are influencing your perceptions. And therefore, you are subject to a form of mind control. Certainly, if we use the other term, perception, a perception download. And then they're not doing it out of malevolence most of the time anyway. They're doing it because they've been through the program you're about to go through and they've bought it, they believe in it, they think it's real, they think this is how it is, this is how the world is, and so they pass that on to you from the earliest possible age. And then you are, within 3 or 4 years now, you're sitting at a desk with an authority figure representing the state, telling you when you have to be there, when you can leave, when you can eat, when you can't, when you can speak, when you can't. They're telling you what is and isn't, what's possible and not possible, the official version of history, the official version of everything. And what then happens is through your entire formative years, right up into teenage years, the state's version of everything has basic control of what you receive as information all the way through, year after year, week after week after week. And you know, I would say that what we call education is actually a prison, a mind prison for kids. It's a mind control program. And the teachers are also caught in this prison, because if they don't teach according to the way the state demands, they don't teach what the state demands, overwhelmingly anyway, then they're not teachers for very long. So it's basically prisoners or prison warders passing the download on to the prisoners, the kids. You then go through college education and university, maybe, and then you go out into the world, and this normal, this what I call postage stamp consensus of how what life is and how everything is, perception of reality in effect, then goes out and becomes a doctor, a politician, a journalist, a scientist, etc. And they take with them this core programming of normal, this core perception of normal, and then so you then have these institutions that run society all agreeing with each other that that version of normal is right. You have peer pressure where everyone around you, or most people around you, who've been through that process and bought the program, they then defend the program against anyone who's challenging it and questioning it because they're mad or strange or weird. And so it goes on. And so you have a deeply programmed population. So if the way to remove the cause of the problem, in this case, is to delete the program, then that's what we must do. You know, people like Kathy O'Brien have gone through deprogramming, years and years of deprogramming, which has deleted the program, deleted great chunks of the program at the very least. It's exactly the same for humanity. And, you know, one of the things that I suggest is that people in their mind, or literally, get a blank sheet of paper and a pen, which is funny enough what Kathy's talking about in terms of deprogramming you from mind control as an individual. And you then reevaluate everything you've ever been told about everything, about the nature of reality itself. And from then on, what gets it onto that sheet of paper, in other words, into your perceptions of reality, has to come through your filter, your questioning filter. It has to earn its place on that piece of paper, instead of just being absorbed, often subconsciously, into this thing you hear all the time. Well, everybody knows that, mate. You know, in other words, that this situation is a gimme, what's going on. Everybody knows that. Why does everyone know that? Because everyone's been through this program and downloaded that. And what this, people talk about the awakening, and it is happening, I'm telling you, it's bloody happening. Well, you've noticed it here, but I'm traveling around the world. I've never seen so many people questioning like they do now, and I've never seen so many people in dark suits within the system, suits and ties, questioning the system. There's some things happening. And so if we make the download of perception earn its place instead of just absorbing it, then it's extraordinary how little of it gets on that piece of paper. Because when you break it down, it's a nonsense. You break down even one of the what would be one of the major gimmies of the world in terms of the human population. This world is solid. This world is of solid matter. No, it's not. That's the depth of the illusion that goes on. And so it's deprogramming ourselves from the download of perception by making that download suddenly justify its existence in our perceptions. And when you do, everything changes, because you just ask yourself, okay, what do you believe? I believe this. Okay, where did that come from? Did you work that out? Did you have some intuitive feeling about it? You follow it through, and it was some external source. It was a teacher. It was a conversation. It was something on the news, all subconsciously downloaded. Because, you know, the reason I explain this, the way this mass programming works, is to get over this question, understandably, that people have. Well, why does everyone think the same and you think so different then? Why can everybody be wrong? Well, it's not being about right or wrong, but because you've all accepted the download. Look at it again, and what this what this awakening that I'm seeing is actually that. You know, people in Britain, and this was a major thing, but it was only the first stirrings of the mass awakening. People took their experience of the European Union in Britain. They took their experience of how their communities were changing, and they made the decision: the European Union is not good for us, right? And the almost entirety of the British political establishment, apart from just a few, was saying to people, you must vote to stay in, it will be catastrophic, that, you know, Godzilla will attack London on the next morning, and all this stuff. And it wasn't so long ago that would have worked. But what people are doing now is they're looking at they're going through this reassessment of perception. They're looking at what politicians say, including the parties that they would normally support, left or right. And they're looking at their own experience. They're looking at the world that they see around them and their communities, and they're going, this don't add up. This don't add up. And they've gone with themselves. They've gone, no, don't care what you say. I'm voting to come out. And that's where that came from. And I think to a large extent, although I think the people that supported Trump on the basis that he was the great Messiah, I think they're going to be very disappointed. He might do one or two things people might agree with, but I think on the whole, they're going to be very disappointed. But it's not about what he does. It was about their perception of what he would do. And their perception of him, I don't think it's right for a minute, but the perception was he was anti-establishment and he was an outsider of the political class. He's not, but that was the perception. And a great amount of support that he got in the presidential election was based on he's the outsider and I'm voting against the system, of course, which was absolutely perfectly personified by Hillary Clinton, who is system to her DNA. So you can start to see that this process of reevaluation is happening, and it's I've been on this World Speaking Tour since June. It's going to go right the way through next year, at least. And I've never seen, and I've gone to many different countries of very different, backgrounds in history. I've never seen it like it is now. People questioning, I went to Estonia last week. Estonia's got 1.3 million people. There was thousands of people turned out in a ice hockey arena to hear a 10-hour talk. This is new phenomenon. This is not what it used to be like, I can tell you.
And is this also because you spoke in the beginning of your journey, so to speak, about truth vibrations? Yeah. Is this the manifestation of the truth vibration?
Well, all I can say is that when my top of my head blew off and I started on this, where I've been going ever since, in 1990, I was told, I went to see a psychic because strange things were happening around me. And I chose to go to one psychic to see if she would pick it up. But synchronicity led me to about 3 or 4 others that I didn't choose to go and see. I just met them in the synchronicity of life. And there was a common theme I was being told, that there was a vibrational change coming, what I would call now an information frequency change, that was going to act like an alarm clock to people. It was going to wake humanity up from its coma, that those that were most awake, if you like, less in the coma, were going to be affected first, and then people who were really in the coma at that time were going to be affected eventually. And there was another, that's why I call it truth vibrations, this process, truth vibrations. The other thing I was told was that this frequency change, as I would call it now, was going to bring to the surface all that had been hidden. So humanity could see what it has been going on and hadn't seen before. Well, I mean, if you go with the benefit of hindsight, and you go with the benefit of what's happening now, I mean, that is happening. First of all, there is this extraordinary number of people now who are questioning reality like they never have before, who are questioning authority like they never have before. And then, my God, what do we know now that we didn't know in 1990? What do we know now we didn't know 5 years ago? This, it's coming up, and it's manifesting in so many ways. Everything from gathering awareness of the illusory nature of this reality, even at the cutting edge of mainstream science now, they can't avoid the obvious anymore, and right down to mass releases of political emails that are confirming what some of us have been saying for all these years, that there's a conspiracy. There's a conspiracy to tell the public one thing, even on the most minor level of politics, to tell the public one thing while believing and planning to do something very different behind the scenes. The collusion between the media and politicians to fix elections through manipulating the perceptions of the candidates in the public mind. Again, perception, deception. All this is coming out, and it's all part of this truth vibrations. It can't be stopped. How we respond to it, well, that's another thing. But this constant movement of information into the, but it can't be stopped.